Yeah, remember Alex? Remember? Hey, remember Ghostbusters? Oh, I remember Slimy?
I feel like I could just end the video right there and people would get the point, but I'm sure you guys want a little more detail, so here we go. Sonic at Shadow Generations. Okay, so as you guys probably know, I'm a pretty big fan of the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. It is easily my favorite video game franchise of all time. That should be evidenced by the fact that I've covered more games in series than any other franchise here on the vlog. And I also hold Sonic Generations in very high regard, outside of the fact that it was just a beautiful celebration of Sonic's history circa 2011. It also, to me, represents the peak of the boost formula. It's where they really perfected that style of gameplay, and I remember playing it in 2011 and being really excited for what would come next. However, in recent years, Sonic Generations has sort of become a source of frustration for me. Not necessarily because the game is bad, I still go back to this one frequently and love the living hell out of it, but rather than it serving as the start of a new golden age for the Blue Blur, it instead ended up being what was essentially the end of the Sonic Renaissance that sort of kicked off in 2010 with Sonic and Sega All-Star Racing. After Sonic Generations, rather than take the boost formula, further polish and refine it while also trying new things with it, with maybe different playable characters or stuff like that, they decided to try something completely different with Sonic Lost World, which, while not a terrible game, didn't really work out all that well. Then they went even further in that direction with Sonic Boom, which for a lot of people represents the lowest the series has ever gone. And then that was so bad that they actually felt the need to go back to the boost formula with Sonic Forces. But unfortunately, they chose to half-ass going back to it, so a lot of people just ended up really hating Sonic Forces because of how little effort was on display with it. It also didn't help that with Sonic Forces, it came in on the heels of Sonic Mania, the first Sonic game in the series to be made by fans of the series who have been working on fan games for several years. And it ended up being the best game in the series since Sonic Generations. So, yeah, Sonic Team wasn't looking terribly good in the eyes of fans after that. And it definitely didn't help that rather than realize that the reason people disliked Sonic Forces so much was because they just didn't put the same amount of effort that they did in the Sonic Generations. They instead came to the idiotic conclusion that there wasn't any more life left in the boost formula and decided to go again in a different direction with Sonic Frontiers. Again, they did not make Sonic Frontiers an open world game because they felt the boost formula had been tapped out. They just found it easier to create five open worlds for Sonic to go screw around in than it was to make the kind of levels you saw in Sonic Generations. And while Sonic Frontiers didn't get that bad reviews from critics, not every fan enjoyed it, and it also didn't help that after that they put out Sonic Superstars, which basically them putting the same kind of effort that they put into Sonic Forces, but applying it to a classic 2D Sonic game. So with all of that in mind, you can probably tell I'm not really stoked on the output of the series recently. And yeah, that is the case. So when I heard that they were doing a remaster of Sonic Generations, I just kind of rolled my eyes at it. It just kind of felt to me like Sonic Team and Sega were really grasping at straws to, get in the good graces of the fans again and, just, not really succeeding. It also didn't help that they had been doing a lot of remasters lately with Sonic Origins and Sonic Colors Ultimate, which also proved to be pretty lousy, all things considered. And yeah, I really didn't care when it was announced that it would include a new campaign featuring Shadow because who cares, dude? However, when Sonic at Shadow Generations came out, it actually did get some pretty positive reviews. And because of that, I decided I should at least check it out. I mean, while I wasn't really interested in the Shadow content, it was more content for Sonic Generations, a game I really liked. So I ordered it from Gamefly and played it front to back, and yeah, it is pretty good. But that's mostly because it's just Sonic Generations again. And really, despite how good I think this package is, there's still a great deal of frustration with it that I'm feeling. Like, it's so bizarre. We've gotten to the point where even when Sonic Team and Sega get it right, I'm still frustrated with them for whatever reason. They get it right, but they still get it wrong. Okay, so first of all, the Sonic Generations side of this package. It is actually a very good version of the game. They definitely learned their lessons from Sonic Origins and Sonic Colors Ultimate. The port is fantastic. The game runs out silky smooth, 60 FPS. The resolution is better. The game has never looked so clean. Very well done. There has been a little bit of controversy because they did change and add some dialogue to the game, which was a little head tilting at first, but whatever. And they added some of the content that was originally inaccessible in the original version of the game. You know, stuff like the pinball machine and stuff like that. So, yeah, they definitely did the port justice. I'm still bitter at the fact that they delisted the Steam version because now that means that new players are currently caught off from all the great mods that people have been making for that version of the game, but whatever. I think what people were really excited about or curious about with this version of the game was the new Shadow campaign. Now, when I heard that they were adding this to the game, I figured that it would just be a, 1 or 2 levels where you play as Shadow and maybe add him as a playable character in Sonic's levels. But no, this is actually a full campaign featuring Shadow that is about the same length as Sonic Generations. And you know what? It's pretty damn good. Essentially, the plot here is it takes place during the events of Sonic Generations, and as all this time paradox stuff is going on, Black Doom starts making a comeback with the intention of corrupting Shadow. And while it didn't really amount to a particularly good plot, really all it did was just kind of acknowledge Shadow's history, which, is better than a lot of recent games in the series, which just kind of forgot about it. But yeah, it wasn't that bad. And the campaign itself, fantastic. There's a great selection of levels here. You got stuff with the Space Colony Arc, Radical Highway, Rail Canyon. I was a little frustrated that there was so much representation from the newer and, let's face it, bad games in the series. They gotta reference 06 again. Nothing from Unleashed, unfortunately. Then you got stuff from Forces and stuff from Frontiers, and while they actually do get some good levels out of that, I will admit that. I was disappointed that they didn't do anything from the Genesis games or, more of the Dreamcast games. I know Shadow wasn't in the vast majority of those games, but he wasn't a big player in Sonic Forces, and he wasn't even in Sonic Frontiers. So I don't think there would have been any harm in adding levels from that. In regards to gameplay, it is still just Sonic Generations, and it actually does some things that I really wanted to see from the Sonic franchise following Sonic Generations. What they basically do with this campaign is just replace Sonic with Shadow, and Shadow has his own unique abilities. For example, rather than just doing the traditional homing attack where you jump into the air and have Shadow rocket at his enemies, he'll actually do chaos control and teleport to his enemies. Now, that might not sound like a big deal, but it allows him to pass through certain barriers and objects. That's a good ability for Shadow. He can also do chaos control once the meter is full, and there's some good level design that comes from that too. And over the course of the game, he's constantly getting new powers as well. You'll learn to do Chaos Spear, you'll get some new transformations as Black Shadow's hold over him starts to take shape. It's exactly what I wanted them to do with a follow-up to Sonic Generations. That being said, I still did have some issues with it. The main issue I had was I felt that the controls were a little complex. They wanted to have the double jump in here, so rather than pressing the jump button again while you're in the air to do the homing attack, You instead have to hit the boost button in order to do that, which is something I always struggle to wrap my head around. And really, I don't understand why they keep doing that. Just don't design your level design to need the double jump. As for all the different abilities Shadow can have, while initially it's fine because your only other real ability is Chaos Control, as you start to expand the moveset, the controls start to get a little too complex, and in a game as fast-paced as this, I feel a simpler control scheme is just better for the experience because it's just a lot less to juggle. The complexity of a Sonic game should come from the level design, not necessarily the gameplay mechanics, which in essence tend to be very simple. But that's really small potatoes in the grand scheme of things. I would say the worst thing about the Shadow campaign is definitely the fact that you can definitely see some of that design mentality from Frontiers leaching its way into the hub world, which instead of just being the simple 2D level select screen from Generations, is this great big open world space that is just cluttered with a bunch of, random Sonic level design that just really breaks the pace in half because you spend a lot of time in the game just trying to figure out how you're supposed to get to the level entrances. Like, did you guys forget why you designed Sonic Generations hub world like that in the beginning? But yeah, Shadow's side of the campaign is fantastic. I thought it was a great addition to Sonic Generations. And you know what? The presentation is really good too. I mean, just look at how they do Radical Highway here. This is like some Doctor Strange level stuff. And they're constantly doing cool and innovative stuff with that. The graphics do stutter a little bit. It doesn't run nearly as well as Sonic Generations did. I kind of wish that they had just used the same game engine so that they could have the same silky smooth performance. But no, the pros outweigh the cons here. The Shadow stuff is great. So if it's good and if it's paired with Sonic Generations, which on its own is just outstanding, why is it that this game frustrates me so much? Well, it has nothing really to do with the game. It really has more to do with Sonic Team. I thought they said that they had tapped out the boost formula. So then, what is this? You are expanding upon it in a meaningful and smart way, and now that you've experimented with it and you've got some critiques with it, you can now further expand and refine it. So what is this crap about it being tapped out? It just, I just feel like Sonic Team is just exposing the fact, without even realizing it, that they're full of shit. I'm like, and I get it. Game design is far more complex than I understand. I know, while I can speak a lot about design in video games, as far as the actual process of making them, I only know enough to know that I have very little knowledge on the subject matter. However, with Sonic Frontier, Sonic Superstar, Sonic Forces, and I just kind of get the sense that the reason Sonic hasn't done so well since Sonic Generations is because Sonic Team and Sega just don't want to put the same amount of effort into it. The reason Sonic Generations was so good was not just the fact that it was polished to a mere gleam, it also had to do with the fact that there was a lot of creativity at work with it. It was really cool to see these old levels come back and not just see them be done with the boost formula, but also get to see what it would look like from a 2D standpoint, like the City Escape level. That was amazing, dude, and it still is amazing, and I'm floored every time I play it. And then, I just haven't seen that effort since then. Actually, I have, but it hasn't been from Sonic Team. It was from the Mania team. And the main issue I had with Sonic Mania was that it relied too much on nostalgia. The best parts of Mania were the new levels. And from what I understand, the Mania team wanted to do nothing but original levels. But they were mandated by Sonic Team that they had to incorporate classic levels as well. So, with that and all the nonsense and bullshit that they have been feeding for years now, I just kind of get the sense that, like, it's just time for them to hand it off to someone new. Just, like, let the Mania team have it again. And, you know, don't micromanage them. There's a reason they decided not to work with you guys again. Like, I know there's fan entitlement, and yeah, a lot of people are probably going to accuse me of that after watching this, but I mean, I can't help it. I have been a Sonic fan for as long as I can remember, and I know how good the series can be. Like, I've witnessed its highs and I've witnessed its lows, and unfortunately, I feel like I've just seen far more lows than I've seen highs, especially in recent years, and I'm just getting tired of that. I don't like getting in front of a camera and, like, talking crap about the series or crapping on Sonic Team. I want to praise this series. I want to praise Sonic Team. I want to praise Sega. But it's just so rare that I get a chance to do that. And even though Sonic at Shadow Generations is fantastic by all accounts, it still just kind of seems like they're still not putting in the effort that they need to. All this is great, but they're still piggybacking on the last good game that they made, which was Sonic Generations. And I just know that this game is going to do super well at retail, and they'll look at that critical feedback and they'll think that the secret to a good Sonic game is just relying on the classic levels and all that nonsense. And right now, they aren't even looking at games that were good, for crying out loud. Like, only 2 of the levels in the Shadow campaign are from good games. Everything else is from the bad games in the series. And while they do end up being good levels, man. So, yeah. Sonic at Shadow Generations, it's great, but I gotta be honest, if you already own Sonic Generations, I really do not feel like this is worth spending $70, $60 on, whatever it's priced at. I'm sure it'll go down in price quickly, but if you already own Sonic Generations, especially if you had the PC version of the game, I would just stick with that, because I guarantee some modders are going to add the Shadow levels in there eventually. And I'm sure that this version of the game is going to start getting mods as well. But yeah, again, Sega just delisting the game, just like with Blizzard or Activision, or it just says to me that they delisted the game not because they wanted fans to have the best version of the game. That is never the case. They just wanted to make sure that they could charge full price for Sonic Generations again. This was just a quick, guaranteed hit for them. Because of that, it's about all the praise I'm willing to muster for it. And even though I still have my praises for this, I just can't recommend it to longtime fans of the series. You should only really check this out if you are a huge fan of Shadow, which I am not, which is why I just rented the game instead of paying full price for it. But yeah, hopefully they realize that there's still potential in the boost formula and just toss out that nonsense from Frontiers and focus on expanding upon what we have here. But they'll probably do something else stupid. Man, I am tired of saying that. But anyway, I've rambled about this enough, and I've gotten off topic enough, so I'm going to call it, guys. I'll catch you next time.